WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on the air. It is New Year's Eve. This show is actually airing on New Year's Eve. We've got an interesting show today with a number of components. We've got several folks coming in to talk to us that have been kind of identified by many people, and I'm sure you as well, as kind of molders and shapers of the community. They have impacted folks' lives in many ways, some of them in a very personal way. The first person up today is Dr. Alex Huff, Huff Orthopaedics and Sports Medicine. Dr. Huff, you're located right here across the street from the hospital on Beeman Street. You've been here for 21 plus years, treated 15,000 plus people, everything from shoulders to knees. You've done it. Thank you for taking a few minutes. I want to ask a question and start the conversation this morning with a key question. When you look back at 2019 and you hear that saying that you've heard so many times, hindsight is 2020. Looking out your window, what do you see? What is some of the things that you see that has happened that maybe even will continue to transfer into 2020?
Well, 2019, first of all, let me say thanks for having me on the show. It's a privilege to be here. It's always great to talk to you. But looking back at 2019, you know, we've been here basically since 1998, and things have evolved and changed over the years. But 2019 was a good year in a lot of ways. I think one of the things that strikes me is the recent influx in our ability to see veterans, retired military, both active duty and retired military. That's something that's been relatively new for me. I've always been enrolled in those programs that allow us to see those patients, but we really traditionally haven't seen that many of them because they've been treated through the Veterans Association system, through the Veterans Administration system. But I guess in June of 2018, the President signed a bill that allowed veterans or active duty that were either having to drive more than 30 miles or wait more than 28 days to see private sector physicians of their choice, as long as those physicians were enrolled in the programs, and we are. And we've seen a tremendous increase, probably, I would say, more than 10% of my business over the last year has been active duty military and retired veterans, and that's been a wonderful thing. It's been great to get to know some of these guys and share they've shared some stories with me that have been really heartwarming, and to be able to serve them and help them, I think, has been a gratifying thing for us at Huff Ortho.
Such a dedicated group of people as well. I mean, you have to kind of honor those folks just thinking about it.
Sure.
We've talked about veterans on this show many times. The other thing that strikes me in that is that covers a large service area as well.
It does. We've had, it's been interesting. We've had patients coming from Jacksonville, from Fayetteville. We've had active duty guys from Fort Bragg that have bypassed several orthopedic surgeons en route on the way to come to Clinton. And another interesting thing is we've treated them and we've operated on them, and then later in the year, months later, we're seeing other family members. Now look at the address and I'll see they're coming from Hope Mills or they're coming from Jacksonville, and I'll ask them how they got to my office. They say, well, you treated our son or you treated my cousin who was in the military. And so it's been good. And I'll ask them, why do you choose to come to Clinton when it's a 1 hour drive for you? And they say, well, they really speak highly of the small hometown feel of our practice and our hospital. They would maybe come to visit their service member in the hospital and meet some of the nurses at our hospital, and just the feel that they got in the environment there was heartwarming to them, and they chose to come to Clinton rather than going through the VA system. So I think that's a good thing for our hospital too.
What you do is so connected to the hospital, and our hospital has gone through a lot of attempts to maintain stability, change it, as you know, I think now down to maybe one of 5 or 6 in the state that is still independent. Is that something that concerns you going forward, because you depend on that facility?
Absolutely. We have a symbiotic relationship. I can't do knee replacements in the office. I mean, there's just no way. And so I need the hospital, and in turn the hospital needs us as private practice physicians and employed physicians to bring our work to the hospital. So it's a relationship that we both need. But I think that things are on the up and up, or at least the big picture is that financially the hospital's doing better. I know volumes are up. Our emergency department has been totally rebuilt. We have one of the nicest emergency departments in the area. It compares to any other hospital that you could go see. So things like that are really good. I think there's been good stability with our medical staff as well. We have a well-trained medical staff, board certified. So the stability that brings has been really good for our hospital and our community.
When we look at healthcare and we look at Sampson County and surrounding areas, the idea that folks would come here seems a little bit strange in one way, but the other way that folks have talked to me, and you as well, I'm sure, is that there is this kind of sense of more of a personal relationship with their physician. I recall when we had a conversation some years ago, you made a point to say one of the reasons you were here is because you wanted to get to know your patients personally and individually, so you understood them. Is that still part of how you're willing to operate? Yeah,
it really is, absolutely. I tell you, I talk to patients all the time who give me stories of how maybe a family member was treated at one of the larger hospitals in Raleigh or Wilmington or Fayetteville or wherever. And they're great hospitals, great institutions that provide needs that a lot of times we can't provide. So there's absolutely no problem with patients going to those facilities. But they'll say how maybe their brother or somebody had a knee replacement in Raleigh. They had to drive, they had to park in the parking deck. It took 30 minutes to walk, from the parking deck into the hospital and to find them in the room and all that kind of thing. And so there's an anxiety factor and then just a nuisance factor associated with that. Sometimes we need those services, don't get me wrong, and I send people to those facilities all the time. But it certainly is easy to park in front of Sampson Regional and walk a few steps into the front door, be greeted by someone you probably know at the front desk, send you up to the floor, the patient's room, where you're going to see a couple of nurses that you live with in the same community, and be able to interact with your family member and things like that. So the convenience factor is just great. And the service is awesome. I mean, the service is really good. Well-trained nurses, therapists, all the things we need to successfully provide orthopedic services is here.
I know you've had several folks that come in and work with you that were physicians in the same field of practice. It seems that we still have in rural areas, and Sampson's one of those, hard to kind of get folks like yourself to connect and stay here. When you look at 2019, have we improved? Is there things that we need to look at in your experience differently? Is it just a rarity to get folks like you to say, look, I'm going to sit here and be here? In 21 years, let's face it, you've grown a lot of roots here in the county.
Well, there's a lot of there's different types of doctors and different types of people. There's people that enjoy a breakfast at Gracie's and a lunch at Jennifer's, and there's people that had rather be in a larger, more fancy establishment. I like the small town feel, I always have. But I think probably moving forward for the future, commuting physicians is going to be the answer. I think there's going to be people that are living in Johnson County, maybe on the outskirts of Raleigh, that rather than drive in and work at Rex and Wake and these other places, they're going to be more willing to drive to Clinton. Dr. Paul's a good example, our hospitalist. Is driving from Apex to work in Clinton every day. So I think that the physicians living maybe in those areas but commuting to our facility will be the answer. Although ideally we would find someone who graduates Clinton High School or one of our county high schools and decides they want to work in Clinton. That'd be a wonderful thing.
And along that same train of thought, one of the things that we've looked at in 2019 has been really a heavy news item, is this idea of insurance for everybody, which sounds wonderful.
Right.
At the end of the day, when we look at that, there's a financial piece, and you're not only an orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine specialist, but you're also a business owner.
Right.
As a business owner, at the end of the day, there's got to be an accountability piece.
Right.
How do we get to that point?
I'm not sure what the answer is there, and the politicians have been debating that for years, but everything comes with a cost. We know that. Everything has a cost, whether you're buying a pen or a coffee cup, a new suit, or groceries for your home. There are price points along the way, and there's differences in the quality. And the key is to try to find some type of a service that we can provide at a cost that is not going to break the backs of our economy. So.
And I think that piece of it is what folks have to understand. It's easy to say a lot of these things, but then you're the person that has to actually make them work.
Well, when you've got payroll every other Friday and you've got bills to pay, I know that Dr. Howerton feels, and Jerry Heinzman, the CFO, feels the stresses of that. I mean, to keep the doors open, it's a wonderful service for our community, but it's tough to provide service for free. I don't care what business you're in; it's hard to do that. So trying to find a way to make things profitable is key going forward.
And that piece itself, I think the idea of understanding that there's a business side of this process, and folks have to somehow regulate and think about some of the things they hear may or may not be possible in a world of we would all like to have that, but it's just not feasible. So I think the next question, we're coming to a close pretty quick here now, but I want to kind of get your thoughts when you look at 2019. What would you see that you would maybe tweak or do a bit different, or if you had that capability that you could go back and take the eraser and kind of say, well, I want to erase this and put something else into place?
I think just improving our efficiency. I mean, there's two different ways to improve the bottom line. One is to increase your volume, and the other is to reduce your spending. And I think becoming more and more efficient and spending time more efficiently with patients and with equipment and things like that is important. But before we go, I wanted to mention one thing that I think is big for 2020 that's not going to get a lot of press but needs a shout out, is that for those that don't know, Sampson County in 2020 is going to host the Special Olympics. The North Carolina State Special Olympics is going to be hosted at Midway High School in the spring of 2020, and that's going to be an opportunity to really showcase our community and our county. Just recently, we were able to do the physical exams for about 180 participants to get them eligible to participate, which will be a wonderful thing, I think, for Sampson County and for the state of North Carolina.
It's going to be a wonderful thing. Plus, it's going to be totally unique. As far as I know, it's the first time it's happened in the county, but it'll be up at Midway High School, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for what you're doing in the community. And, of course, as you and I have talked off camera many times, you always have a seat right there anytime you want to come to do a full show.
I appreciate
But this
the
show will
opportunity.
air on New Year's Eve. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, we've just been talking to Dr. Alex Huff. You may know of Dr. Huff. He's located on Beaman Street in Clinton. Give him a call. We look forward not to seeing him professionally, but seeing him on the street in the coming year. Stay tuned.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Part 2 of our New Year's Eve 2019 Reflection Special. We have with us Dr. Eric Bracy. As I mentioned in the first segment with Dr. Huff, we're looking at the observations of people that are molders and shapers of our community. And moving forward, Dr. Bracy, I know of no one that knows more about what's going on in education. And for folks that just hear the word education, they understand that you're not only molding and shaping individuals' lives, but you're also building that person for the future. Let's talk about 2019. Would you say it's been a turbulent year for you, or what's happening, what concerns you as you look at that crystal ball and look back at 2019?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me back again. 2019 was a very interesting year and a challenging year, not only for us in Sampson County, but for all school systems across the state. Reason number one, not having a state budget. It will always be in my mind the year that we operated and closed our year without a state budget. And that not only affects us as school leaders, but most public departments across the state of North Carolina. We, as a school system, have been very conservative because we really don't know what we have to spend yet. So we're being very conservative on our expenditures. Makes it very difficult to give our students and our teachers what they need to be successful. But we're going to keep plugging at it. We have great teachers, great administrators, a great and supportive Board of Education. But it's been very challenging. I do thank the state for giving our teachers their step that they'd earned by accruing a year of credit as far as work service. So we recently got them their retro pay for that, and now they're being paid at that level. But it's it's been very difficult for us as a school system.
When I look at 2019, and I think you and I have had this conversation in the past a bit about the kind of the diversity of the students in a large rural county and the funding capacity to be able to do things that I know you want to do,
Yes.
which is technology improvements and those kinds of things. How do you wrestle with that, and how do you win that game, and how quick is it that it's too late? I mean, you might be, somebody was telling me the other day, said, well, you know, at one time I'd have just liked to have had, you know, a person to be able to have a tablet to hold in their hand, much less having something, other technology piece, and now we're quickly moving into new genres with things.
It's funny that you mentioned technology, because our technology needs in Sampson County schools are massive. My technology director requested through me that our board purchase some machines for them, and our board was generous enough to put forth $250,000 to purchase technology, because quite honestly, with the machines with Windows 7, they were going to be unusable here coming up soon. So the budgetary constraints make it real challenging for us as a school system, because we're not in a wealthy area or a wealthy district. We're in a low wealth district. We're definitely not low performing. Our students and teachers have done well in spite of a lack of resources. So, but it does bring challenges, because there are a lot of creative things that we as a school system and as a school community would like to do. And you mentioned tablets in every student's hands. We would love to have a one-to-one. All of our kids that come to school have a device, use that device all day, and in some senses take those devices home. But we simply can't afford it. We write grants and we're trying to fund it that way. But some school systems just fund it locally. We're not in a position that we can do that, and it makes a difference. We as a school system are at a point we're trying to do creative things. You know, we always talk about students being career and college ready, and I think we've emphasized the college part a lot more than the career part. But we're at a point in our school system, we want to make sure our kids have options when they graduate from high school. We want them to leave certified in an area if they choose to go to work when they leave high school as well. But the economic challenges do make it difficult for us to achieve everything that we want and to get our students and teachers everything that we would like. For example, professional development. State doesn't give us any professional development dollars. They haven't for years. So we have to fund all those professional development opportunities locally. And all teachers, all administrators need to go to new professional development opportunities to keep them fresh and abreast of the new things that are happening across the nation and the state as well.
It's interesting as you mentioned the whole professional development thing. Just prior, obviously, to you coming on, we just had a conversation with Dr. Huff, and we look at the medical profession, and we look at trying to attract people here to expand these independent physicians and other medical professions in the area. There's so many things that we'd like folks to come back to in Sampson County. As somebody that kind of helps shape that educational piece, how do you explain to the kids in high school today, this is something that you can do, this is a fresh area you can come to, you can be creative? Is that a hard thing to try to sell folks on, especially when they're being almost like a vacuum cleaner pulled toward Raleigh and Greensboro and Charlotte and Wilmington?
I think it's difficult and challenging because there's so many shiny things in Charlotte or Greensboro or Raleigh, but it's nothing like home. And what we as a community here in Sampson County have to do is provide opportunities, employment opportunities for our students, give them a reason to go to school and come back to our community, because it's a great, very caring community. And people like me are going to be retiring soon, so they're going to need people to come here and assume these leadership positions. And our future leaders, our future superintendents, our future J.W. Simmons, they're sitting in these classrooms right now. And there's nothing like people from a community, because they care about their community, and they have for a long time because they grew up in the community. So we have to create opportunities to give our students a reason to want to come home.
How much does it concern you with teacher income as it relates to retaining and keeping good teachers, and also, as you just pointed out, attracting people to go through the educational process to be qualified to be a teacher?
It's very challenging, the teacher income piece. I think our teachers should be paid a lot more than they're paid for their first year, and I think it should go up every year. Also, from a local perspective, the state sets the state salary schedule, But from a local perspective, what I would like for us to do is to be able to raise our teacher supplement, to be able to compete with the Cumberland counties and the Durhams and the Wakes. And another example of giving our students and future graduates a reason to come back. We can't be even with those counties, but we can be more competitive with those counties from a supplemental standpoint. Our supplement is 7%, so we can get that up to 10 and 11. I think it'll make a big difference on more teachers that we could attract here to our community and our schools, because we have great schools, we have wonderful kids, and we have a caring community. So that helps us attract students, our former students and first-year teachers to our district. But to be able to keep them is a challenge when we get them here, because they love our schools, but the economic challenges and things are costing more. And young people like to make more money as well, and I can certainly understand that.
One of the things you mentioned, not only 2019, but 2018, when we look back from the vantage point we are now, we realize and see this huge diversity in our population of students. And of course, a lot of those are Latino students that are here. We hear a lot of conversation now about these language immersion courses, in which we're trying to get students to be able to at least speak and understand a minimum of 2 languages.
Sure.
Is that something that you see that we're fertile ground for, simply because where we're located, and how does that impact the teacher-student ratios?
I think we are, and we had conversations about doing a dual immersion class at several of our schools this year, but for economic reasons we weren't able to do that this year. But it's still something on the forefront of my mind that I want to do. It's a great program, and research states that kids who know 2 languages perform better student achievement in all subjects, not just those 2 subjects that they're learning. So we are absolutely a great place for a dual immersion classroom and a dual immersion school. Without question, we are.
You've been a huge advocate, and I know your school board has been looking very closely at the buildings and structures in Sampson County, and particularly in the Hopton area. We're in the process now, and looking back at 2019, this is something that was discussed. It's been in the media. The idea of new school buildings, but we're talking $20–30 million investment. Is that the local government's responsibility from the educator's perspective, or is that the state government's responsibility? Where does the actual capital investment come from? Where should it come from?
It can come 2 ways. It can come through a state bond from the state government, or our local government can fund us, whether it be a bond referendum or local capital dollars that they push to us. But I'm glad that you brought that up, because I was going to bring it up. I think of 2019, and I'm proud of our Board of Education for looking at our facilities and looking at the needs, particularly at a Hopton High School that was built in the 50s. Yet you have Midway High and Union High, they were built in the mid-2000s. So it makes a difference when you walk through those halls and you look at those science labs versus the labs that the students at Hopton High are using, and they're at a disadvantage because they don't have those newer facilities with wider corridors. It makes a difference, it really does. And some of the creative lessons that the teachers at the various schools could do. But not only Hopton, our board is also looking at Hargrove, which was also built in the 50s, and Roseboro-Sellenberg Middle School. Parts of that school were built in the 1940s. So that's amazing in itself. But research clearly shows that the building and the condition of the building can make a difference as far as student achievement as well. So I applaud our board for looking at our facilities and making them a priority in 2019.
And that piece also goes to the economic development for the area too. I've been told that oftentimes new school facilities, i.e. equal more economic development, more new houses being built, those kinds of things.
Agreed, that they do make a difference as far as new houses being built, but also more importantly, and I certainly am an advocate for new buildings, that the buildings that you have, make sure they're performing at a high level. And we're proud that we have one of the highest performing school systems in North Carolina. And I think that having new buildings would only enhance that and take it to another level.
It would be tremendous if we had that to add to it and expand that base, particularly the location of that school being near I-40 and the intersection of a major state.
I think if we get a new Hopton High School, that will only make that area grow even more. I think it would do a great deal for that area.
We've kind of come to the end of the show. I want to thank you for being here today and doing this short clip. Also to remind you and our listeners that I'm inviting you back as soon as you can get back, and we're going to have a full show about education. So
Always great to be
Happy
with you.
New Year to you,
Same to you.
2020, and we're looking for a lot of positive things.
Thank you, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We've been talking with Eric Bracy for a short clip here about education 2019, transferring to 2020. Stay tuned. We're coming up with our next guest, and we'll be back in one moment. Call a friend.
You come out to replace a bad sensor, and that adds a 5-year commitment to my contract, and you don't tell me? Here's your sign.
Switch to the sign that's keeping homes secure and customers happy all over the area. Security from Star Communications. We pride ourselves on fair pricing and quick, friendly service every time.
Somebody trying to break into this place?
Security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. This show is airing on New Year's Eve. We're anticipating 2020. Many of the guests we've had this morning, including Dr. Alex Huff, Dr. Eric Bracy, and now the Honorable Clark Wooten, Chairman of the Sampson County Board of Commissioners, is with us. Clark, we're talking about 2019. We're talking about things that you have seen from the strategy point of the Chairman of the Board of Commissioners, which is a huge budget, which is a large county that impacts a lot of things statewide. In 2019, we could talk about hurricanes, we could talk about flooding, we could talk about devastation, we could talk about your efforts in bringing additional industry here. Even we could talk about your commentary about economic development is everyone's responsibility. When you look in that mirror, if you will, and reflect back, using that advantage of hindsight is 2020, what do you see in 2019? What might propel itself forward in 2020?
Well, thank you, JW. I really appreciate you having me on the show. It's always a pleasure to visit with you and talk about things in the county. I'm extremely passionate about it. And looking back on 2019 and really on the last decade, we're about to embark on a new decade. The thing that comes to mind, JW, is we can't stand still. We can't be status quo. Agriculture has been a wonderful to Sampson County and its people, but it's changing and changing globally. The agriculture entrepreneurs that have been able to change with that have done well. So we have to look to how we can support the global initiative of this world in Sampson County. And it comes through many things. It comes through education. Dr. Bracy was here. County and the city schools have made leaps and bounds to make sure that our children were as prepared as possible. The county commissioners have worked to balance the funds and have increased the funds that go to each child. But I hear in many places that Sampson County residents of our generation, want to find a way for their children to come back to Sampson County and make a good living. They want to entice the younger generation back here. And the way through that is change. The way through that is change in technology. The people that are producing this show, if you look across the state and look across the southeast, we have internet, high-speed internet in a lot of rural places, and through what happened for their grant, they're gonna put it in other places. Being connected to technology is a key, and what we do and what we support in that technology, the way we are going to attract children and the younger generation back to Sampson County is have a job that entices them. And I won't use the word millennials. My children have threatened that out of my vocabulary. Mm-hmm. But when I ask what they desire, JW, the thing that comes up every time is I want to do something that makes a difference. That's what, that positively impacts. It's not money, it's not, fame or fortune, is I want to make a difference. And bringing an industry to this county that generation can come and make a good living at and make a difference. That's our goal. You know, we have worked on customer service here in Sampson County. We have worked on economic development. Stephen Barrington, a wonderful, good Lord blessed us with a good man, a good view. What I learned through that process and through the process of some contractors that we use, Global Location Services, is the technology, where we were at technology, people were not even looking at Sampson County because we didn't have the information on the web. We didn't have our information about what's available here. So we were not even getting looks. And that's a big part of what Stephen's working toward. And the economic development team, which, just for everyone's information, it doesn't stop with Stephen or Janice. It goes into Joel, Mr. Causey, Ray Jordan. I mean, we have a big team working on economic development, because what I hear from people is that's what we want. We want our children to be able to come back to Sampson County. And also, you know, you mentioned earlier, I mean, we have to be cognizant of what we're doing, what it costs. And we can't stifle business by simply raising taxes. I mean, we have three choices in this county for revenue. We have to cut costs, raise taxes, or, as I'm like to say, we gotta sell something. We gotta sell ourselves. We gotta sell ourselves on business and bring people in. You can certainly, if you look back, see the positives out of Enviva. It was a long process, took longer, but when you get an infusion of that kind of capital, that kind of cash into a rural county, it makes a difference. And what it did for myself and my fellow commissioners, I mean, it started a fire in us and a passion that that's the direction we need to go. And you know, you talked about hurricanes. One thing that the county did that I thought was so impressive in these disasters, they went through the last two. They revamped their SOPs, went through how jobs needed to be done, and with Dr. Bracy and Dr. Johnson and their teams in the schools and our county employees, we take over 1,000 people and take them out of their day job and put them in a disaster response position. And the work that was done by bringing people in, by getting their input about how we could be better. Fortunately, our near miss this time, our near miss here for Sampson County, I was able to witness that transformation, and people were crystal clear on how they could support in disaster. And that's huge. I mean, that's part of what I think government personally should be able to do, is help people when they can't help themselves.
Would you see that as a positive in the sense of showing how we react to disasters for folks that may look at this county and say, I'd like to come here? Well, look at how they reacted, look at how they dealt with this.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, when people and companies invest, and more than likely, there's a better than 50% chance that if our next business could be a foreign investment, bringing an industry into the U.S. And of course, they look at if there's a disaster, how the county can support and how they react to that. Because, we don't know what God's plan is for us. We do know that there's going to be challenges. There's going to be natural disasters, and there's going to be change. Question that we have to ask ourselves, are we going to let change be done to us, or is it going to be change done by us? And to me, I don't know about you or anybody else, but that latter is much better. Because change is only constant in this world, and I want, and my fellow commissioners want to impact that change positively. And again, we got a great team. I mean, we got a great team. New library director here, Stephen Barrington, new transportation director here. I mean, we are building. Certainly, Ms. Dillman and economic and the HR department, they are building a strong team, and that's what it takes. I mean, JW, you know better than anyone. No one person's ever done anything great. It's always a team. And building that strong team, just like building this building, is one brick at a time. And that's how we're going to face the challenges that we're not able to identify. Because as hard as we work to identify our challenges, there's going to be something that's going to come at us that we're not expecting. So being prepared is certainly a big piece of it.
Obviously, I have a lot of questions, and every time you say something, I've got questions. But one I'm going to try to get in. We've got about a minute left. The idea that you're chairman of Sampson County Board of Commissioners, you oversee in the sense of policy the entire county. Also, as a businessman, you see the impact of government as it relates to business. How does government continue to grow and, I'll choose this phrase, stay out of the way of business so it can be successful?
Well, it's a balance. It's a balance. And, you know, you talked about 2019 and this decade, looking at it in a rearview mirror. It's always 2020, JW. I mean, you know, that's why when you look in the car, your little rearview mirror, it's about this big. Mm-hmm. Windshield's big, mm-hmm. You know, because you need to see what's in front of you. It's a balance. It's a balance. What I think personally is if we operate our county government like a business, then I think it's very supportive of business.
I want to thank you for being with us. We come to a quick close here. I want to remind folks as they're listening to this show, you're invited back to expand on this in the longer segment. I want to wish you a happy 2020, you and your entire family, and especially being a grandfather. God bless you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in just a moment. We're talking to Tom Hart, city manager here in the city of Clinton. Stay tuned, and we'll be looking at 2019.
To get the most out of your electronic devices, you need a strong internet connection and a protected home Wi-Fi network. You need high-speed internet from Star. Star has the fastest, most affordable high-speed internet service available for all your devices. We have no long-term contracts or high-pressure sales. Our service speaks for itself, and switching is hassle-free. We take care of everything with free installation from a local company. High-speed internet from Star. Internet at the speed of life.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're talking today about 2019. It's New Year's Eve. This show is airing on New Year's Eve, Tuesday at our regular time, 2:30. If you happen to be listening to us on radio or you're seeing us on Star Communications TV, Channel 16, we've been talking to several folks. We actually talked with Dr. Alex Huff today. We've talked with Dr. Eric Bracy, our school superintendent. We've talked to the chairman of the county commissioners here, Honorable Clark Wooten. From a perspective of 2019, it's always important to talk to folks that have been directly involved in shaping and moving our community forward, and one of those folks is Tom Hart, the city manager here in Clinton. Tom, you've been with the position now and in the city of Clinton, you and your family, for a couple of years. It's a transition period, I guess, for the first year. 2019 for you, what are some of the things that you saw? I always look at 2018 as kind of a time where you found out kind of where everything was and looked at where all the buttons and switches was and that kind of thing. But 2019 gave you a moment when you could see things happening, you could react to some, you could make a difference with some, and some you may still be working on. Just give us your observations of 2019.
Yeah, well, obviously, like you're saying, the first year is just a little bit of trying to get your feet under you, figure out where the light switch in your office is and things like that. And I would agree, 2019, you finally start to hit your stride in your second year. experience is an underrated thing, I think. But you certainly, you start to hit your stride working with your team of people that you work with, and you start to build that network where you start to know who you can call to get things done. And I would agree that this has been a good year for that. We probably covered a lot of this before, and if people have seen me on here previously, have kind of a new team at the city, have a new city manager. I brought a police chief who was on probation when I got here, good probation, new at the job probation, not trouble probation.
Right.
Brought him off. He's a almost 30-year veteran of this department, but he was new to that chief's position. Hired a new fire chief in. Promoted somebody into public works director position. Just hired a new HR director. So we've always kind of got this, I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, but we got some old dogs and some new dogs. And I think that we're hitting our stride and starting to work well together. So it's been good. It's been a very good year for that.
You mentioned HR director. Now she's from the Goldsboro, Wayne County area, I think.
She is. She's from the Goldsboro area, and she was in the Human Resources Department for the city of Kinston. Yeah, so we were able to steal her away, which I always like doing.
When you look at these positions and the availability of the service you render to the public, how important is it for you that these department heads are able to work together homogeneously together and get things done and not necessarily wait for the city manager to say you need to do A, B, C? Are all of these folks self-starters?
I would say pretty much all of them are self-starters. They pretty much have to be. There's too much going on for me to micromanage. I mean, just out of the gate, it would be almost impossible. If I were to dive down and do it in any one particular area, it would very much so probably be at the expense of other things that I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, we have a lot of department heads that are definitely self-starters. They're probably occasionally frustrated with me when they come to me and want to know how to handle something. A lot of the times I kind of throw it back to them. But I think that really, the reality is they can come up with a better or as good of a solution as I can 9, probably 10 out of 10 times. Yeah.
One of the things I think that all of us have heard in 2019, and the word is polarization. We've heard that as it relates to getting jobs done. We've heard that in politics. We've heard that in social communities. We've heard the word that seems to be something that is almost non-resolvable in the sense of how do we bring folks together that may see things completely different but yet still move forward together to accomplish common goals. How hard is that for a city manager, especially in a small town where seemingly everybody knows everything that's going on before maybe the city manager knows what's going on?
Maybe occasionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, of course, even smaller communities like ours are not immune from polarization. I think that it probably penetrates local issues less than it penetrates other issues, which is probably a good thing. I mean, a key part to polarizing people is sort of uniting them against that other, right? And that's a harder and harder thing to do locally, at least. It's a lot easier to be upset with some abstract group of people that you've never met, but for the most part, these are the people that are pumping gas next to you, or it's your neighbors. So I do think locally we do a little bit of a better job, but it does occasionally, regrettably, creep in.
One of the big issues, I know that a lot of people, probably for you it may have not been the biggest issue, but oftentimes media makes it the biggest issue. But the Highway 24 project, I heard more commentary, and you and I talked off camera about that. That project was looked at as going to be one of the greatest attributes. However, in the process of doing it, seemed to be taking forever. Reflect for us on that and kind of tell us how it felt from a city manager point of view constantly, because I know you probably did. Every other person you saw maybe had a concern about a traffic cone, or how long is this going to take, or when is this going to be fixed. Has that subsided?
Yes, it has definitely subsided. The new road Now, there's a difference between being done in terms of a driver and being done in terms of DOT and their paperwork. So someone from DOT would probably tell you it's not done. That's probably still an open project for them technically. But in terms of the through the windshield survey, it's pretty much a done project now. I think people are starting to get used to some of the turn movements. We're in Rotary Club together, and it comes up at Rotary Club from time to time. I've gotten to a point in all things in my career where I don't feel the obligation to explain everything to everybody when I don't have anything to do with it. So I think, sometimes I've said, well, you'd have to ask a traffic engineer because that's who came up with that turn movement. That's why you can only make a left from here and a right from here. I think they would tell you it's all about safety and reducing crashes. But I think people are starting to get used to it. I think we're glad to have the project in our rearview mirror. I think that it's sort of very much so, if there was something productive from it, it probably brought to light that there are state streets and there are city streets. And of course, this DOT, the state DOT, 24 is a state DOT road. So it was interesting because you sort of had this street that's very much so an integral part of our community, and there were some problems with the construction and how, the progress of it that was causing a lot of problems for our residents. So we tried to help in the ways that we could. We tried to dialogue with DOT. We try to act as a go-between when people need us to do that. Used our police department, try to make sure people were being as safe as they could. I think we might have warned some people or written some citations for people gridlocking intersections and things like that, because that was a complaint that we had heard. So we tried to be responsive and help the situation as much as we could. And of course, the big thing with that is that round 2 is coming up. The Faircloth Freeway Bridge that goes over 24 is the next project. So we're of course keeping our eye on that project and hoping that detours and the traffic is managed well throughout that project that's coming up.
Do you feel like getting early on information out and trying to educate the public on what to anticipate and those kinds of things? I know I've mentioned a couple of times trying to get somebody on from DOT or what have you, but oftentimes it's hard to get those folks out of their world of engineering or what have you to sit down at a table and talk. And quite frankly, they don't want to because it gets a little bit controversial.
Well, I think the folks from DOT are reasonably constrained. That a lot of we have a very good working relationship with the local DOT people, and we have a good relationship with the people in the state. They're a bureaucracy with a structure just like any other agency, and the local people are a little bit constrained sometimes about what they can talk about. But yeah.
2019, when you look back, if you had to categorize it in a year of success, opportunity, do-overs, which one would you like to talk about more? Everybody would like, I guess, a do-over. I mean, I can think in personally and business-wise, people say, well, I'd love to do this different the next time.
Yeah, so I guess what I'll hit on there is that the county, the city, sort of everybody had a little bit of a hurricane do-over opportunity that didn't really come into fruition. Which was that during hurricane, I think Matthew came, I believe that was in 2016, and everyone kind of said, wow, every once in a while we're going to get walloped with a hurricane. And then 2 years later, another one comes and, I think was the wettest on record or the most rainfall to hit the Carolinas. And it was all of a sudden, these were not going to be these sort of one-off, once or twice in your career type of events. It seemed like this was going to start happening more frequently, and we probably needed to get some systems in place to be better and more efficient at handling them. I think the county and the city, I think everybody was sort of on the same page with that after Florence. So a lot of people, the city did a lot of drills. We looked at our policies. We came up with a lot of sort of contingency plans. I know that the county did the same thing. I believe they completely redid their sort of response manual for all their departments. And then all of a sudden, here we were in 2019 with Dorian starting to come towards us. And it didn't really wind up being all that impactful, but it was a really good opportunity for all these communities to test these systems that we had sort of developed on paper. And they seem to have worked pretty well, actually.
I want to thank you for being with us today. We've come up on a quick close here. Also want to thank you for allowing us to use this location which is right near your office here, for the shoots for this show each and every week. We do We Should Know show from here. So thanks to Tom Hart and the City of Clinton for providing that access for us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week. We also thank you for being with us today as we reflect on 2019 and we think about 2020. We want to wish you a very happy new year, and we also want to wish that God will bless you as it has many of us in many ways in 2019. We look forward to seeing you and your family at various functions around the city and throughout the county. Moving forward, each and every one has a goal and mission. We hope you choose that in a safe, positive way and enjoy life to its fullest. And we will see you next year. God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.